Hi, it's Megan. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite crock pot soup recipes. These are perfect for the fall and winter seasons. And let's turn the camera around and I'll show you what we're going to make. Here is everything that you need to make the chili. You're going to need some garlic, 2 cans of tomatoes with green chilies. I have diced tomatoes with jalapenos, so I'm going to use those. I also might add a few green chilies as well. You need 3 8-ounce cans of tomato sauce, or 24 ounces total. You need a can of light red kidney beans and a can of dark red kidney beans that are drained and rinsed. You're going to need some sugar, cocoa powder, half a cup of beef broth. You're going to need 1 to 2 pounds of ground beef, an onion. You're going also, for spices, you're going to need paprika, cumin, chili powder, coriander, and salt and pepper. So here I am starting out by adding in my beef broth, and to that I'm going to add my 3 8-ounce cans of tomato sauce, and then I am going to add in my 2 cans of petite diced tomatoes. These ones, like I mentioned before, have jalapenos with them. And then I rinsed a can of dark red kidney beans and a can of light red kidney beans and added those in. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of chili powder, 2 teaspoons of paprika, and a quarter teaspoon of coriander. I didn't have any cumin that day, so I didn't add any. I also have 1 teaspoon of sugar and 2 teaspoons of cocoa powder going in. The cocoa powder doesn't make it taste like chocolate. It just gives it a really deep, rich flavor. And then while I was gathering all of that, I also was browning my ground beef and a diced onion on the stove with a little bit of garlic. And then once that was all browned and I got rid of the grease, then I just poured that mixture into the crock pot. And then I'm just stirring it all to combine to make sure my spices are distributed evenly and that everything is covered and looks good. So I'm just going to plug that in, and it cooked on low pretty much all day. Everything was cooked, so just needed to kind of heat through and get the seasonings heated up. We like to serve this topped with sour cream, shredded cheese, and tortilla strips. Here are the ingredients, the first ingredients that you're going to need for the tomato Parmesan crock pot soup. You're going to need 4 cups of chicken broth. This is just the homemade chicken stock. I can link the video down in the description box for how I make that. You'll also need some garlic and 2 cans of diced tomatoes. The ones I'm using come with garlic and onion, but we really like garlic, so I'm going to add some extra. I'm out of onions, but it does also call for a cup of onions. But since I'm using these, I'm not concerned about adding extra onion. You'll need a cup of carrots and a cup of celery. You will also need salt, oregano, and basil leaves. After this is cooked, you will also need Parmesan cheese, half and half, flour, and butter, and I'll show you what to do with that at the end of the cooking time. So here you can see I'm adding in my carrots and my celery. I added a little bit more than the recipe called for of each of those because they're good and it doesn't hurt. Then I added in my chicken broth and my salt. Now you'll see I'm adding my oregano and basil. And the chicken broth will cook down and melt so that everything fits better. So then I'm adding garlic and my cans of crushed or petite diced tomatoes. And then I just cooked that on low all day. And then once it had cooked, I was going to add in a half cup of flour. This is just to help thicken it. And then I used my immersion blender and mixed it all in. The original recipe calls for you to make like a roux. I just didn't want to make extra dishes that day. So I just blended it in while I was using my immersion blender to get the vegetables all smooth. After that flour was incorporated, I added in my 2 cups of heavy cream. You can also use half and half for milk if you want to. So I added that in, and then as well as a whole cup of Parmesan cheese. You can use real Parmesan cheese. This I just had in my fridge and needed to use it up. So that's what I used. And then I just got my immersion blender back and started blending the cream through and the Parmesan cheese through until everything was nice and smooth and a good flavor. This is one of my girls, especially one of their favorite soups. We always serve it with grilled cheese or oyster crackers. This is also one that is really good as leftovers for lunches. Here's everything that you're going to need for the creamy chicken wild rice soup crock pot edition. You are going to need 5 cups of chicken broth. This is just my homemade chicken broth. I can link a video where I make that. down below in the description. You also need about 3 carrots and 3 stalks of celery, a small onion, 1 cup of half and half milk or evaporated milk, half cup of flour, 1 cup, I believe, of wild rice or wild rice blend. You're going to need 1 to 2 chicken breasts, salt and pepper, parsley, poultry seasoning, and a bay leaf. So I'll show you how to put all of that together. So here I'm adding in my just 1 chicken breast as well as my 5 cups of chicken broth. It will melt as the heat of the crock pot goes through. Then I'm adding in my 1 cup of wild rice blend and some salt, pepper, and parsley. I just found my wild rice blend at Winco, but I've also found it at lots of other stores, just pre-bagged. It's not too difficult to find. I also added in some poultry seasoning and a bay leaf. Then I'm going to add in my chopped onion, my chopped celery, and my chopped carrots as well. And this ended up being one of my favorite soups from this video. After it had cooked all day, I stirred it a couple times throughout the day. I mixed in a little bit of flour with some of my half and half to make it a little bit thicker. Then I got my meat masher and just kind of shredded up the chicken. Make sure that you pull out your bay leaf because you don't want to eat that. So I shredded up the chicken just so it was in smaller pieces, and then kind of mixed all that up and added in my milk mixture. Once that was in, again, I just gave it a really good stir and just kind of left it back to heat through. And then we just served it plain and it was really, really good. Okay, here's everything that you need for the sausage tortellini soup. You are going to need 3 cups of chicken broth, 2 minced cloves of garlic, 2 cups of half and half, 2 pounds of potatoes. The recipe calls for 2 to 3 handfuls of fresh spinach, but I'm just going to use some frozen. It also calls for 9 to 12 ounces of tortellini. I'm going to be doubling the recipe, and so I'm going to be using a full Costco size of the tortellini. It also calls for between half and a pound of sausage and salt and pepper to taste. So I'm going to get browning up the sausage and then get everything going in the crock pot. So here I started out by adding 3 cups of chicken broth, like the original recipe said. I also added some salt. I should have added a lot more because it needed definitely more salt. And then I added in pepper and my parsley as well as garlic. And then I chopped up my potatoes and added those in. The original recipe calls for a mixture of regular and sweet potatoes. I just used regular. Then I added more chicken broth as well as my ground sausage. I added more chicken broth just to make sure that my potatoes had enough liquid to cook during the day. Then I let that cook pretty much all day. And then I got my meat masher again and just kind of mashed up the potatoes just to chunk them up a little bit more. You could cut them smaller, but I found if you cut them too small, then they just kind of disintegrate in the soup. So I cut them a little bit bigger and then just chose to mash them down a little bit before I finished off the soup. Then I added in 4 cups of half and half. Again, I was adding more liquid because I was adding more of the pasta, which soaks up some of the liquid as it's cooking and as it sits in the fridge. So I added my whole package of the tortellini from Costco. It was 1.5 pounds package. So I added that in and then put it back on high for 30 minutes. I also added about half of a bag of frozen spinach, stirred that all around, and then, like I said, put it on high for 30 minutes for the pasta to cook. And then we just served it in bowls, topped it with a little bit of Parmesan cheese, and you can serve it with breadsticks. This is, again, one of my family's favorite soups. It stores well in the fridge, but the tortellini does start to go a little bit more soft and soaks up a lot of the liquid. So when you're reheating it, you might need to add more milk or half and half to kind of thin it out. So those are my recipes for this week. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you comment down below what your favorite recipe is, or if you have any other soup recipes that you love that I should try, make sure to leave those in the comments below so I can try them in the future. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.